Welcome to the Mindful Money Podcast. This podcast is a weekly exploration into a new philosophy of money through psychology, philosophy, and practical wisdom. In this episode of the Mindful Money Podcast,
so then, I really had to sit through and meditate through and understand all these places where I was subtly locked and repelling money, and also judging money, and also, seeing money as something other than what it is, which is energy, right? Just pure potential.
all right, welcome to the Mindful Money Podcast, Pedram. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Absolutely, dude. And I know that, I know personally, I've been following you for a while. I'm really excited that you're on the show today, and I've really been looking forward to this. So I appreciate you taking the time, and let's just hop right in with a bit about your history and a bit about your perspective on money here. I mean, with Mindful Money, we talk a lot about how money's not about the money. And I know that you have a really interesting past. You've gone through being a Taoist master. You're at various masteries of martial arts and meditation. And just can you give us a little bit of background for those that don't know you?
Yeah, sure. Pre-med UCLA, hated it. Met a Kung Fu master, life on one side, very kind of sick and sickly death energy on the other. And I'm like looking down the barrel of a life I really didn't care for. And all of a sudden I'm doing Tai Chi, Kung Fu, Qigong, all these kind of crazy things I could barely pronounce a month before. 30, 40 hours a week, became a monk, became the senior student of the Kung Fu master. Turns out he was, kind of one of the biggies that came from China who, basic lineage stuff, right? And so I then suddenly became a torchbearer of a Taoist tradition. Temple was burned down during the Cultural Revolution, and I was kind of charged with carrying the lineage on, became a doctor of Oriental medicine, tried to fix healthcare from within, realized that healthcare is crap because it's really the MASH unit, right? So if you're sitting there just, patching up people with bullet holes in them, you could do that all day, every day for years. Really what you need to do is negotiate peace. You need to swim upstream and stop the war. And so then I got into media, made my first movie, wrote my first book. Now I'm on my third book and my third movie. And it's what we do at well.org is try to really affect the memetics of our culture in a way that is supportive of growth and peace and awakening. And so, it was really decadent for me to stay up in a monastery. It was good for me, and I wasn't doing much for the world. Now I'm doing a lot for the world, and not sleeping enough. But it's the work in front of me.
What made that change happen? I mean, it sounds like you had this huge 180 moment in your life. What invoked that?
Yeah, I mean, so being in the Himalayas, it's nice. I mean, listen, you're meditating all the time. It's there's a bunch of people who are praying for loving kindness. It's a pretty cool place, and I started to feel out of place there. I grew up in Los Angeles, right? And so I grew up, went to UCLA. I was doing, normal guy stuff before I went into all this monk stuff anyways. And then I just started to have this nagging feeling that I didn't belong there. And then as I sat with one of the teachers at an ashram I was at, he's like, look, you don't belong here, man. What are you doing? And I'm like, it's partially I didn't want to hear it, but I knew he was right. And it was because as I was sitting there, I felt like I was on the beach of the, East, as like people from the West kind of washed up on the beach, all kind of running from their world. And, there wasn't anything happening other than I just felt decadent. It was just, I'm working on myself, but the world is getting worse. So I'm just going to hide here and let the world fall apart. And it didn't feel right. So it was one of those, calls to action where it's like, no, draw your sword, go back to the world and make a difference, stupid, and that was it. It was just, and I knew he was right. And I knew that's what I needed to do. From that moment, I went from I shifted my vows as an ascetic, which means, you renounce the world and you live up there, to becoming a householder, which means you enter the world, you have a real job, you have a real career, you take on a family and all that. So now, I run a big business. I have a couple kids. I've got a really busy life, and I understand what normal people stress about, right? I live there. And so it really helped bring me off of that pedestal of the holiness of being someone who can, have the decadent luxury of leaving everything and living up there, versus the person who has to face the inevitable karma of humanity, which is, what are we doing, right? What are we doing? How are we living? How are we coexisting like this? And how can I make a difference?
How did you make a difference? I mean, you say you have this big business. I know of you, but what got you started? How did you get moving, changing the world?
Well, when I came back and was doing all my medical stuff, first of all, I realized that, again, I was inside of a broken system, and from within the broken system, you can't really fix things because it's all predicated on illness, right? So the insurance companies wouldn't even pay me unless someone already had a diagnosable illness. And all my training, I went back and became a doctor of Oriental medicine. All my training was in prevention and prediction. So I am being paid for something that is not necessarily my strong suit, and I can't even do what's my strong suit because that's not what I'm getting paid for. And so the financial incentive model was all messed up. So everyone talks about healthcare reform. It's not healthcare reform. It's healthcare finance reform is what these guys are talking about, who pays the bill. But no one's really talking about how to get healthy on a mind, body, spirit level, and how to stay healthy by adjusting lifestyle to live a way that has just more balance fundamentally. Right. And so I made my first movie, Vitality, and, it's been seen by millions of people. We started a lot of programs over at well.org. My second movie, again, seen by millions of people, called Origins. My first book was very kind of esoteric and shoppy. My second book became a New York Times bestseller in the first week because I understood finally how to speak to normal people as a normal person instead of having them come to me. You gotta come down from the mountain and be useful.
No pun intended.
That's it.
Yeah,
exactly.
So a question I love to ask people, and I think it's so appropriate for you, is what is your perspective on money now, and how has that changed since you were a kid? I mean, this is a podcast that explores the way that people think and feel and act about this thing that we call money. And it sounds like you went through this huge transformation and then just launched movies and things left and right. So I'm sure something changed for you. I'd love if you could speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up historically, just to kind of frame this, is my father was a civil engineer in Iran at the time when Iran was booming, and so you're a very useful part of society. You're getting paid a lot of money. So he went to school, he came back, he started making great money, limousines and helicopters, and whatever you want because we need you. And that was the first 3 years of my life, right? And then the rug gets pulled out from under us. There's a revolution. He was working with the old regime, and so it was time to go. So he went from that to, having a back surgery and, basically getting out with the shirt on his back with his, wife and two very young kids, managing a Carl's Jr. So he went from riches to rags and slowly built himself back up, never to that point. Like he never really recovered from that. His identity was really predicated on, who he was as the guy who was making that money. And so, early imprint there. And then you grow up.
The identity piece, I hear. Really.
The identity, yeah. I mean, money and identity, have a lot to do with each other because in our culture, money, your money defines you in a lot of ways, which is, I think, is an aberration. But that we could talk about that. But then I started to, I went through my studies. I was going to be a doctor. I got it. Like, I didn't know why, but I like things, right? Toys cost money, money buys things. It's fine. And then I went into all my spiritual hippy dippy stuff, right? And inside, right? And I'm saying
I laugh because I have a friend who calls everything spiritual hippy dippy, like it's some, you mentioned aberration, but I like that you make a joke about it.
Yeah, well, because I mean, there's a lot of baby and bathwater there, right? So, I'm studying Taoism with a Taoist master and an unbroken lineage, where I'm learning the stuff that is, just not available to your average person, and it's beautiful. But I'm surrounded by people who've been infected by very kind of confused communist ideation over the years, and the hippie movement really became a lot about, money is evil and don't touch money, and it became the counterculture really repelled money. And so as I went through, and who am I to say I'm immune to identity mimetics, right? And so as I went through, and I went from like pre-med person to spiritual person, all of a sudden a lot of these ideas and memes kind of got brushed in under the radar, and these became presuppositions and belief systems that kind of embedded themselves in the macro, if you will, of like this identity. And so now all of a sudden money's evil and I repel money and all this stuff. And it doesn't matter when you're an ascetic. It's like, cool. It's part of my identity. Come back and become a householder. Come back and start a business and have $250,000 a month in overhead, and figure out how your repulsion of money is supporting that. Right. And so it really had me have to reevaluate what it is to be a householder. Right. I need to be the king of my kingdom. I need to generate more and more money in a benevolent way to then support all the people that are on my payroll, support all the people in my universe, and do more good in the world. So then, I really had to sit through and meditate through and understand all these places where I was subtly locked and repelling money, and also judging money, and also seeing money as something other than what it is, which is energy, right? Just pure potential. And when I start to get out of the way of that, now I can move millions of dollars into whatever dream I want and make the world a better place. And so I've really picked up a sword around that, because I found where I was really caught up in that. And I do good with my money, and I generate money ethically, and I spend it on things that matter, and I spend it in supply chains that are supportive of a better world, and I vote with my dollars, right? And this has all been part of my arc of my own awakening, my own growth.
And I love that you mentioned that money is nothing more than pure energy. That's something that some people have touched on this show and others haven't, and I think that really feeds into what you're talking about before, about how money fed into your identity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you live in a capitalistic society, and it's all about, what you have and what you can, your consumption behavior and your productive capacity and all these types of things. And so we've lost the script in a lot of ways, right? And so good people feel like, good people aren't greedy, and so good people don't care about money. And therefore sociopaths and psychopaths and narcissists who do care about money go after the money. They end up, having money. They end up buying politicians. They end up, lobbying Washington, and they end up controlling the world and making the world look like exactly what we have. Right. And the good people of the world who don't want to touch money worry about money every day of their lives. They sweat their bills. And so it's this logical fallacy that is just there. And the more I think people kind of step in and bring money back into the light, and understand, how to leverage their labor, their time, their efforts, and their sentiments on really having a much better understanding of their personal agency, their own personal role in what the world is going to look like based on how they, spend this next thing. Right? Every single time you swipe your debit card, you're voting for a world. Which one is it? Right? And there's great companies doing great things, and there's jackasses that are filling the oceans with plastic. Which world do you want to vote for?
Exactly, and it seems like there's this piece of awareness that comes into the good guys and the bad guys when it comes to money. I know myself, I went through a similar thing. Like, I'm not managing $250,000 in overhead, but I fight with myself constantly about, I don't believe in sort of how did you put it? You put it, you said something like, the good people aren't greedy and think about money all the time. And I have this notion that, money is this thing that it created the world the way it is now. It's tied to my identity. How can you be, really? I want to ask you this because you went through this transition. How did you step out of that tension and get going? I mean, you said once you started to see money for what it was, but if it were that easy, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah.
So what was it for you?
So, I mean, first of all, there's nothing like $250,000 a month in overhead in your late 20s to kick your teeth in, right? You know what I mean? It's just, it really makes you have to think about things differently because, it's like, well, I don't want money, but all these people that I've hired and I love cost me money every month. And, for me, it was really, you really start seeing the nuances and the subtlety of why I think a lot of people feel money is evil. And for me, I got stuck in a third-party payer system. Right. So for me, we would do everything right, everything ethically. We'd get patients in, we'd see the patients, we'd change their lives, we'd help them out. We'd, send them off with a smile on their face, referring their friends and family, doing everything on the front end right. And then Blue Cross or Blue Shield or one of these guys would be like, oh, hey, you know what? This month, we're just not going to pay you. We're going to hold up 80 grand and ask you for notes just because we can mess with you. Right. And so you get this third party payer system that was just messing with our money. And it just really made me look at the purity of the transaction. Right. In the old days, I'm here to heal you one way or another. If you don't have money, give me a chicken or, help me, sweep my hut. Right. Whatever it is. But like there's going to be some sort of exchange of energy, but I'm here to help you. Who's this guy in the middle? Right. And so this middleman energy has really distorted medicine. And so then when you start looking at the middleman energy in all of, our financial interactions, you look at banking, you look at credit cards, you look at all of these kind of intermediaries of, money and how people end up in these kind of terrible, high debt situations and how people end up really, putting themselves into all sorts of consumer spending that then keeps them from being able to leverage money as a tool, more energy, like saved up, banked up energy to fuel their dreams. And you realize, look, the freedom is there, but the snares and the traps are everywhere as well. And so once you start to really think about what money is, then you have to understand your critical role in the midst of that, right? That whole transactional system is predicated on one thing, you making decisions. So if you're not happy with where you are, then maybe you need to make different decisions in life, which would then clear all this energy around money.
The value set.
That's it. But we're not trained to think that way, right? Because you turn on the TV and you're like, oh man, real men drive that Toyota truck. They have financing, right? And you just run out and, exchange your perfectly good car that's been getting you to and from work and is fine for this new shiny thing because, the neurology and the psychology and all the things that go into the persuasion vehicle will entice you to go out and spend money that either you have or don't have, but then put you into money debt and put you into money stress.
Right. And so if we back up and come up to like this 10,000 foot view, it's really never about the money. Like you said, money is pure energy. So it's really about the value set that we have and getting in touch with that identity that you mentioned and what you really stand for. Because, one of the things that we tell people when they get started, whether they buy the book, they start the consulting, they take the classes, we're giving you a way to spend and to live in accordance with your values. We're calling it a prosperity coaching technology. So, how can people get connected to that value set and not be succumb to the news and the shiny and all that stuff?
So, it's a big question and it's a loaded question because the way the world works is the externalization of the solution set. So I need to come to somebody to tell me what to do because I don't know the answers. Mm-hmm. And, unfortunately, that's not the way things are, but that's how we always look for things. Like, you know what? I have been living my life a certain way. Now all of a sudden I don't feel well. Go find me a doctor person, right? I have, made a bunch of mistakes. Let me go find a financial person. Let me go find a dating person, right? And so what we need is solutions outside ourselves. And, and it's great to have, look, I'm a doctor person, like I help people, but the core principle in all of that is, who are you? Who are you? The question, who am I? What am I doing here? What are my dreams and aspirations? I'm going to be buried 6 feet under in, a certain amount of years from now. So what is this whole thing about? No one is really digging into what life is about. No one's asking the bigger questions, the bigger picture stuff. And because they don't know themselves, then they have no frame of reference. They have no center to be able to know anything else, right? So then they're just being told what to do left and right. And it really becomes an issue because we have, the Buddhists call it hungry ghosts, right? Most people are walking around ghosts, not connected to the source of spirit and that source of wisdom that comes from within. And so for me, that's the answer to everything, is first connect with your own inner wisdom, understand who you are, take care of yourself, and then based on what the happiness that you have found that's bubbling up inside, then you make decisions that are life affirming and kind of move you in other directions. But you don't make decisions going out there like looking for happiness, because if you're looking for happiness outside yourself, you're going to spend all your money and you're never going to find it, right? And so again, it's an orientation, operating system framework kind of question that you're asking. And for me, it really has to do with tapping into your own spirituality, tapping into your own sense of self and understanding who that person is.
Yeah, and I think there's a big piece there that we already know. Like, I love when you were talking about people knowing that there's something wrong and thinking that the answer's outside of them, because I have this phrase I tell my friends, if you ever remember something, you never forgot it, ever. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you know that there's something wrong, you know what the answer is.
That's it.
Right?
That's it. And if you knew what the answer was, then, why weren't you looking there for all your other answers? Right. And then that's really, for me, that's kind of the center of the whole island, right? That's everything. And then the concentric rings that come out from there are just, the simple decisions that you make, the people you choose to hang with, the things that you think you need. And there's nothing wrong intrinsically with having things, right? There's nothing wrong intrinsically with going on an expensive vacation. All that's fine. I mean, listen, you can't take the money with you. So then the real question is, what is going to be your experience of life? And the money that you spend, is that making the world a better place, or is it contributing to the world's problems? And then really looking at the kind of flow of your touch points in this reality, right? When you step on the ground, are flowers blossoming, or are you polluting? And so that happens in the wake of everything that we do. And so if you look at your wake and you basically are honest about the wake that you're leaving, then you
right now, not that it can't change.
Not that it can't change, but here's the thing: unless you radically change what you're doing and who you are right now, the next 10 years of your life are going to look very similar to the last 10 years, right? And if you project that out for another 30, 40, 50 years, that's it. That's your legacy. Did you leave less pollution? Did you, create more love? Did you create more abundance? Did you help more people? Or do you keep doing the bullshit that's right there behind you in the rearview mirror? And so most people don't see that because we don't really look ahead, right? We don't really look forward and realize that, our current trajectory is going to create that.
Yeah. And you mentioned the vacation. I mean, there's a difference between a guy who takes a vacation like Jordan Belfort, right? And a guy who takes a vacation because he needs to recharge to continue to create a good wake. So even acts like that, you say the money won't be here when you're 6 feet under. That's true. And continuing to support that wake behind you. Occasionally you have to stop and refuel the ship, for example.
Yep. Well, and that's it. I mean, right now, as we speak, I'm supposed to be in Paris. And, it just got to the point where my wife, it was just getting stressful. And I was just like, honey, listen, I'm in the midst of making this movie. We got a lot going on. Let me finish this thing. Let's get it. I'm sitting on 2 big eggs this year. I got a book coming out and a movie coming out on conscious capitalism. And we got a lot going on. And then once all of that is done, I'm going to take my family away for 6 weeks and just hang out in Italy and drink wine and enjoy and recharge and all that. And we absolutely deserve it. And, it's like, recess makes sense if you've done your homework. Right. And so, I'm happy to go there, and I'm happy to go to, I'm supporting, this great family over there. And like when I go traveling in Africa, I go to these eco lodges, and, I know where the money goes. I feel good about where the money goes, and I'm happy to spend it because I know it's recirculating.
Right. And I think that's the most important part is some of the people that we've talked to in terms of our client base will say, hey, I know I should be spending on this, and I just feel horrible about, I just went out and bought this thing and it doesn't seem very important. And that's where we get into the value conversation, because if you're not happy with what you're doing, you're not going to be happy with what you're about to do, frankly.
That's it. And the way marketing and advertising is set up is to really hinge you on your unhappiness, right? So, if you look at it, it's just, am I going to get paid, late, or live forever? Those are kind of like the three kind of levers in marketing, right? And so what you do is, like, let's just say you have a cosmetics line, you adjust your messaging to make someone really you put your finger in that place where they feel older and uglier and just not quite themselves and not attractive, not able to attract a mate. And then you put up a picture of Jessica Alba or someone using your product and say, look, I use this, and if you use this, you can borrow and approximate my beauty. And it's just all BS, right? But it just gets you into that insecure place and then gives you a way out by spending money that isn't actually connected with reality, right? It's not tied to the reality of the situation. And so, the reality is you should probably sleep more, eat more vegetables, exercise, feel good about yourself, and you'll have a radiant smile. But instead, you just go to the Maybelline counter at the mall and put some like toxic crap on your face, trying to look like someone who, isn't you.
You're never going to look like, exactly.
Yeah.
And a big part of what you talk about throughout this process is that awareness, that mindfulness. We touched on this a little bit earlier. And I like how in your speeches and in your book, you talk about how I have the Urban Monk, by the way. It's you said you wrote a couple of books. That's the one that I'm referring to for those listening. But you talk about how, we can't all just go sit up on a mountain and remove ourselves from society and find that meditative place. So what are some things that some people can do on a consistent basis to stay connected to that awareness?
The whole kind of point of the Urban Monk is to say, look, you have to find a center in the middle of the storm, right? And so, you can't run for the hills. I don't even think that's appropriate anymore in this age. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide, right? I've been to the most remote islands, with tribes and villages with this last movie, and there's just a bunch of plastic on the beach, right? The world has expanded to the point where there's very little room to hide, which means you can't hide, which means we have to face it, which means every time you're sitting in traffic and you hit a red light, here's the 5 breaths that you take. When you wake up in the morning, this is your ritual to kind of get yourself going for the day. When you are at your desk, every 25 minutes, you just take a little break and take 10 breaths, do 20 push-ups, and just kind of catch yourself and get your blood flowing and check in with yourself so that you have an orientation that's built around kind of self-check-ins and self-love throughout the day. And as you start to do that and you start to feel better inside your own body, then you start making more and more life-affirming decisions. Hey, you want to go get a drink after work? How about we go to a Pilates class? Hey, do you want to go to this place in Club Med and just sit on the beach and drink for a while? How about we go to East Africa and go to one of these eco lodges and see some amazing animals and have the time of our lives and stop putting money into the hamster wheel of this crappy tourist industry. So there's so many things that come from making the first decision, which is self-love, and then you make better decisions time after time after that, right? But if you're under duress, you're not feeling well, you think that something outside of you is going to fix you, then all these other kind of proposals end up kind of landing, and you end up spending your money on crap thinking it's going to help. It just doesn't, right? You have to. So for me, I always, I build in meditation, I build in Tai Chi, I build in little quick workouts. I mean, that's why the Urban Monk did so well, is because it speaks to normal people. And, what normal people need is a 5-minute breather, not a 5-month, sabbatical, because they're just not going to. I got kids. Like, what am I going to leave my kids and go meditate? right? It's not realistic.
Right. So, and what we learn in those moments too also plays into, how we spend our money, how we go about investing, how we go about doing any of those things, because then we're coming from a grounded place.
That's it. And coming from that grounded place, then we understand how money is energy. Mm-hmm. And how we're oftentimes, a lot of people, I don't really do this anymore, but I did for a long time, is I would trade my time for money. Right. And a lot of people do. Right. That's their
paid
salary.
Hourly, that's what you're doing.
Yeah. And even if you're in a salary, it just breaks into hourly, really. It's like if you don't show up and put your time in at that job is going to go away. So that time for money equation, then if you just kind of like extrapolate that out and look down what that means, it's like, okay, well, how many heartbeats did I just invest into this thing, this piece of paper that's a paycheck that now just went into a facelift for my wife, or a this or a that. And so you start looking at how your vitality and your life force and all the energy that you're claiming you don't have is flying out the back door into things that you don't need. And then you're worrying about more money. You're worrying about not having time. You're worrying about being tired. And so you got to look at that exchange. For me, time, money, and energy are on a continuum. And if you could, there's like an interchange between those three, right? That's my next book is called The Art of Stopping Time. And a lot of it is basically understanding how to get in and stop and shift your perspective with time, because then your energy and your money get under control, right? And so, and again, it's all about understanding that exchange, your vital life force that is so lacking. Number one complaint in a doctor's office today is fatigue. Okay, so what is that? It's an energy deficit. Your energy is going out faster than it's coming in and restoring, right? And then if you look at that and you look at the parallel of like Americans being saddled with consumer debt, it's almost the same thing, right? It's just everyone is
students
drained.
Nowadays. Yeah.
In you start, they get you at hello, right? Like I remember walking around as a freshman in UCLA, signing up for credit cards because the guys were giving us free Slinkies, right? They're just giving you some like toy. They're trying to like dupe you into getting your stuff and like, buying beer on a credit card. And then you're like, oh wait, I don't have money for this. And then boom, there you go. You're an interest.
Or even worse, you go party and then you realize you don't have money to pay it back. Yeah.
Well, that's it. So that's the culture, right? That's the culture. You get them spending, you get them doing stupid things, and you get them ahead of themselves. If you don't have the energy to feel present now, you're never present. And therefore, you're always robbing Peter to pay Paul, energetically and temporally. You don't have time. You don't have money.
And if you borrow from tomorrow, you're pulling from tomorrow's money and time and energy.
That's it.
All three.
And energy. That's it. You're so drinking coffee is like borrowing from tomorrow's energy today, right? It's the number one drug in America. Everyone's in debt. Everyone's tired. You know what I mean? Like you just look at this continuum and you're like, oh my God, this is way deeper than just money. This is how I roll, right? This is my operating system. It's my framework.
Yeah. So there's a pretty big link between how people think and how people act, and money is just the manifestation of that.
That's it. It's just the external manifestation. It's how we trade for goods and services in the world that we live in. But, this is an amazing thing that like kind of brought me full circle, which is then it kind of triggers your survival genes, right?
Right.
Like, I've had many, many months in business, where I'm like, I don't know how we're going to make it, right? I don't know how we're going to make it. This funnel dried up, or Blue Cross held our money, and this money is not in, and payroll is due in 2 days, right? And then you really have to think about who you are in reality and survival and all these types of things. And you're like, damn, I got, and now especially now I got kids to feed, and so I have
one due in like a month.
Oh man, what are you doing talking to me? You should be sleeping right now.
I slept in. I go to bed early. I'm trying to get up. Early-ish, but
bank that sleep, man, because I got my baby is now 1 1/4, and we're just sleeping. We're finally sleeping again. But like you never know. We went to the ER 2 nights ago because she developed croup, right? And it's just like you're like, oh wow, I just pulled an all-nighter and I'm on camera all day. Oops. Right? And so you have to bank up the sleep. You have to bank up the energy.
Is that a thing that we can do? We can bank up sleep. A lot of people say we can't do that. I'm really curious.
You know what? I have a Taoist teacher who went on sabbatical for 2 years, and his covenant with himself was basically do only that which feels natural. And so he went, found a place in the jungle and just started kind of living off the land. And he just would go to sleep, wake up, go back to sleep. And at one point he's like, dude, I think I'm broken. Like something's wrong. Like all I'm doing is sleeping. And he's like, look, a deal's a deal. And then one day, 3 weeks later, he woke up feeling like himself. And he realized that after 52 years of being like a normal guy in America before finding Taoism and like studying this stuff, he had banked up. It took 3 weeks to catch up on the sleep debt.
Wow.
And restore his system to the point where now he could sleep 3-4 hours a night and he's full energy. So I think that that's a fallacy. I think that they haven't looked at the long-term numbers on that. I'm a big fan of things like from ancient Egypt all the way through Taoism, where they do dark retreat. You spend 3 weeks in absolute darkness and restore your brain in ways that are just amazing. And so I catch up on sleep. I sleep in on weekends as much as I can. I sleep when the kids sleep on weekends. And, I'm telling you, it's my sanity. Because you don't know where you're going to lose it, right? Like you don't know. Tomorrow there could be an earthquake. I'm sitting in California right now. There could be an earthquake right now that fundamentally changes everything in my life, and I might not sleep for another week.
And that goes to reaffirm, the time, money, energy thing. Like, if you were to die tomorrow, would you be happy?
No. Well, you better start being happy and then build around that. Right. So find your happiness, and then the money and the time and the energy all start to kind of fall into the line. They all kind of get on the right tracks again.
Yeah. And then you're actually building up your momentum. So one of the theories that I like to play with, and that the entire Mindful Money app and platform is based on, is this idea that if you spend or even save, it's about building prosperity. So getting that initial buffer for yourself in alignment with what you value, what we've been talking about this whole show. And then putting your money into those things that you value, even if it's not putting it outward, putting it into a bank account for the thing that that you value, that you want, or whatever. That can increase happiness, especially in those times when you're not happy. You can be like, oh, I have, instead of I have not.
That's it. And it's a real nice place to come from, right? To not be in survival. Now, for me, one of the things that I had to fight with is I'm a martial artist, and I'm, very good at, they say neurons excel at the edge of chaos. And I started to become, during those years of really high stress and low money and ups and downs and overhead, I really started to I understood how I am better on the edge of chaos, and how my creativity and a lot of my kind of spunky warrior energy comes out. And so one of the things I've had to fight in the aftermath of those days is living on that red line because it feels good, right? The dopamine of living, on the edge of chaos and on the edge of survival. And a lot of people are there and they don't realize that they're addicted to that, right? And I found that in myself because I was just like, oh, this is a challenge. And then everything else became boring, right? It's kind of like a drug addict. But it's, to what you're alluding to is that energy of just knowing you're okay.
It's the first chapter of the book. That's literally what my first chapter talks about.
It's called Knowing You're Okay.
No, it's you've always been okay, and you always will be. That's
it. Do you know that the title of my next movie is Prosperity?
No, I didn't.
So
but
I have the CEOs of Whole Foods and Seventh Generation. I have the whole Conscious Capital, movement in the movie. Comes out this fall. And one of the things that we've realized afterwards is, we can change consumer behavior by saying, look, just spend your money with the good guys. But then, one of the things that I found was really profound was, okay, but where does your money sleep at night? And I started looking at Wells Fargo and all these crappy banking systems. And then we started looking at all the community banks and credit unions. And I found all sorts of wonderful ecosystems, way better for the world, where you could park your money at night, makes you just as much, if not more money, and helps you make the world a better place. Again, voting with your dollars, putting your money where it counts. And so we have a banking app that we're launching and a prosperity credit card to help, get people out of debt and spend their money with the good guy. There's all sorts of things happening around it. And again, it was by me looking at, where money gets stuck in the flow of things, going, wow, this is kind of crappy. I could just as easily move. I mean, we moved from Wells Fargo to New Resource Bank, and now we're moving a lot of our other stuff to Bank. There's all sorts of really cool banks out there that are doing good things. Why are we not banking with them instead of these jackasses that keep getting in trouble for being jackasses, and we keep saying, "Oh, it's okay." It's not okay.
Right.
It's my money. You don't get it.
And you
right?
get enough people. You get enough people behind that. They're not okay now. Yeah, it's just the manipulation tactic.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They've never been okay, but because we have fallen under this dreary trance, this sleep, where we think it's not okay, but that's the way the world is, we just like keep going in that direction instead of saying no. You pull your money, all of a sudden it's like choking them out. It's like pulling life force away from an animal, and so this tumor stops growing. And so, you have to understand that your money gives power to whoever you give it to. So be mindful of where your money goes, period.
Yeah.
And support, and in doing so, don't be stingy. I give lots of money to people I like. I buy products and services from people that I like and support their message because I just want to see them do well. I want to support them, their families, their future, and their message. So I give money to all kinds of people that I think are just doing good work.
Yeah. And it's because it's in alignment with what you believe is true for the world and what you believe will make the world a better place, which took, I imagine, a bit of exploration on your part.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, I grew up in Southern California. I grew up watching Scooby-Doo. I mean, the amount of crap that was embedded in my psyche subconsciously about how the world works and, what makes you happy and what toys you need to be happy and all that. I mean, there's been a lot of, I've been running around with an eraser psychically for years, just trying to clean up all these stupid belief systems that have made me, confused about what's up, right? And so now that I've kind of woken up to it, I'm like, oh, got it. Let me help people out of this fast because everyone's walking around like hungry ghosts, right? We're walking around like zombies.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway is to know that we're walking around like zombies, and then to use some of the techniques that you gave earlier, taking that time to really check in with yourself. I like to use the word catch yourself, because it's like throughout the day we got all kinds of balls in the air, we're juggling everything. Just take a minute and let everything fall and see where they fall and see what you're left with.
That's it. If it's that important, 5 minutes from now it'll stay that important. If it's life threatening, then there's an ambulance anyways. I mean, how often are you in a life threatening crisis situation, and how often is it just like really, really big upstairs, right? And so just taking a few breaths and looking at it with a bird's eye view can make all the difference in the world, but we won't do it because it's like, we just stay in there and we stay panicked. And all of a sudden, those bad decisions kind of like add and stack on each other.
That's that drug addict metaphor.
That's it. It's dopamine. And we love the rush. And, even in chaos, it's the rush. Right. And so, you want to step back and strategically look at how you're going to take down your day, how you're going to take down these things, and you'll do fine. Right. But if you try to,
and you always have, first of all.
Yeah.
You've always.
Well, one of the things in martial arts that I learned early on, not early on, a little later on when I had some proficiency, is that, I'm in a combat situation with one person. I know what I'm doing. 2 people, 3 people. The maximum amount of people I could fight at one time is 5.
This is a true fact.
True fact. There's just that kind of space around me, right? So if I could fend off 5 people and do battle with 5 people simultaneously and hold them off, then I can do the same thing with an army of 10,000. It's just a question of stamina
and time. Yeah.
Yeah, stamina and time, right? And so, so what are the 5 things around you in front of you? That's it. You can't. And ideally it's the one thing in front of you, right? And you're aware of your perimeter, but just one battle at a time, one opponent at a time. And so I'm a big fan of so I've sat on meditation cushions and sat with the Dalai Lama and, done all the esoteric stuff. And I've become a real big fan of just good old fashioned calendar management. Time management, chunk time, just, saying, okay, this morning, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing nothing else. I'm not checking email. I'm not texting my wife. This is what I'm doing. You get in, you get it done, you get out. Right.
It's like time flies. Yeah.
Well, yeah, time flies. Plus you're done. You don't have this thing. You're not in time debt with some other thing looming that you still haven't finished off yet. You start to metabolize your to-dos. You start to metabolize and move through life, and you have agency, and you're completing tasks and feeling good about it. And that way, psychologically, you're not carrying around this like, I'm such a loser. I went to work all day and I still have work on my mind. And then you can't be there with your family. You can't be there with your kids. It's terrible, right? So just be good at what you do. It's called kung fu, right? The literal translation is hard work. And that's something that, I just remembered. It was this flag that came up that I really want to say. One of the other things about money that I find to be really important and relevant is I feel like these law of attraction people have really muddied the waters, saying, okay, all you need to do is like click your heels and see yourself on a yacht and then it happens. And that's BS, because what really needs to happen is, yeah, you need the clarity of thought and you could have desire, all that. That's fine. I don't take issue with that. But the back end of that is the literal translation of kung fu is hard work. Then you work your ass off for what you want in life, right? And so I feel like the work ethic component has been missing. So everyone wants to get rich quick and no one wants to like get in and work hard. And so if you want to get rich quick and you're not willing to do the work, you're lost. Right? Because everyone I know who's made it and is successful and is happy about being successful and isn't blowing their money on cocaine because the money came too fast and has gone too fast, worked for it. And they earned it and they know the value of it. And now they're reverent and they understand the flow of it, but it's homegrown, right? It's none of this like flash in the pan crap. So, I think that the work ethic of America has really been compromised, and people who are willing to measure thrice and cut once and really, think clearly about what they're doing and then work hard towards their goals, those are the people that end up making it way better. And those are the people that end up being happy.
Yeah. And I love that point. I really do, about putting in the hard work. And I think it's also important to note that, yeah, put in the hard work and hold that vision in your mind too. Because if you're going to work for something, if you put in the hard work, you mentioned getting rich quick. If you put in the hard work and you don't know what you're working towards, or you forget, or you're halfway there and you pivot unconsciously, it's the same as not even working for it, really. So one of the things I often get asked, I talk about mindfulness. One of the things I often get asked is, well, I try to do this sitting quietly thing, and I stop them right there. I'm like, it's not about sitting quietly at all. You're never going to sit quietly. That's not how the mind works. It's about coming back to the thing. Pick your thing. Come back to the thing. When you come away from the thing, come back to the thing. It's practicing focus. That's all it is.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it was so hard, right? And that's what people go to. They're like, but it was so hard. It's like I tried flying a helicopter and I sucked at it, so I quit, right? It's like, well, it takes thousands of hours of practice, but then you're a badass, right? And that's a big part of it is, you got to work hard, you got to be focused. And one of the, and we're running out of time, but this is an analogy that's really worth mentioning here. Is I call it the life garden, right? And if you had room in your life for 5 plants, what would they be? And then once you've decided that, how are you allocating water, which is energy, attention, and focus to those, and everything else is a weed. Most people have a great idea, and then they start working in that direction, and then some other, squirrel, flash in the pan thing comes up, and then their attention just focuses away from their garden. And all of a sudden they're watering all the weeds, and then they're wondering why their life isn't working out. And so getting the clarity to stay focused on what you said you're going to do every day, do that, see it through, hatch that egg, and then move on to the next thing if you want. That's fine, but stay focused. And again, that's where the mindfulness, the meditation, all this stuff comes in is, I just think that the attention span of the modern human has become so drastically reduced. Then they're like, oh yeah, haha, everyone laughs it off. I'm like, no, it's called meditation. Fix it now, right?
It affects everything.
How like we've just become idiots, right? And it's just like that's not an excuse I'm willing to accept. Work on your focus. There's practices to do it. Work on your life. Stop complaining about your life. And as soon as you do so, you'll see life start to work for you. And then stay focused, because then you're going to take your foot off the gas and you're going to go back to being a distracted moron again. That's who we are, right? We are human. Distracted morons.
Right.
Yeah, it's human, right? But instead of making an excuse for that, you create an operating system to face that and address that every day. And that's when you become great.
And maybe that operating system is the thing that catapults you when you take your foot off the gas, because it's, you hit the cruise control button and you actually thought ahead for a second, absolutely.
That's it. That's it. And most people are like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna get a trainer. I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna drink green smoothies. I'm gonna do all this shit, right? And then you get to the point where you're like, I lost 20 pounds. Here's my, my beach body. Here's my picture. This, that, and the other. And then you go back to, eating crap and going back and you gain the weight again, right? It wasn't about that being your lifestyle. It was about hitting this little like benchmark to take a selfie and then getting distracted and going and let life take you away again. It happens financially. It happens with health. It happens with relationships. It happens with everything because we can't stay focused.
Right.
And that to me is the disease of modernity, right? We are spiritually dead and we're not home here. And that, that's the one takeaway message is you got to wake up to who you are and you got to stay awake, which takes work every day.
I love that. And I feel like that just started a whole nother thread that we could go down. I know we're kind of running short on time here. So where can people find more about the books you have coming and the new movie you're releasing?
Sure. So well.org is my home, umbrella home for all of it, for the movies. And for The Urban Monk, it's theurbanmonk.com. But they cross-pollinate. So the Urban Monk is out, and then in October, The Art of Stopping Time comes out, and then this September is when Prosperity comes out. But I already have a couple movies out on well.org and a couple books that you can get through all of them. So I've been busy.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Pedram. I really appreciate your time and your passion here on the show, especially toward the end. We got a little into it there. And I really appreciate you and what you're doing in the world. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this work. This is meaningful stuff.
Absolutely. You've been listening to the Mindful Money Podcast, a podcast for people who want to align their money with their values. Love this show? Head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review. Want more incredible show content? Head over to mindfulmoneypodcast.com for show notes, past episodes, and a sneak peek at what's coming next. In next week's episode of the Mindful Money Podcast.
For most of my life, I lived with a value set of I'm a victim of it, I'm a child in it, it's something that is imposed on me from the outside that I have to meet, which leaves me feeling ashamed, less than, incapable, impotent, disempowered, and, just like resentful.